Angela tilted the curtain just enough to see without being seen. The black SUV had passed their house again, slower this time, its headlights washing across their mailbox like a spotlight. It made the third pass that afternoon. The vehicle crept by like a predator, pretending to be lost. She stepped back from the window and called for Jack, who was fixing a loose kitchen cabinet hinge. That same SUV? Again? It's circling. Jack didn't look up right away. He gave the hinge a final twist before standing and wiping his hands on a towel. Same one as yesterday. Angela nodded. Same plates. Same guy. He walked past her and looked out the window himself. Expression unreadable. No decals. Just the HOA sticker in the corner of the windshield. That's their security, I think. They've never done patrols before? Not like this. Jack watched until the SUV disappeared around the corner again. No siren, no lights, no reason. Just a slow, quiet loop. It didn't sit right with him, not because he feared it. Because he recognized the behavior. Surveillance. Intentional. Calculated. He'd seen it overseas before something happened. That evening, after dinner, Angela noticed a folded paper resting on their front porch. There had been no knock, no doorbell. The note was typed on standard printer paper and simply read, "Property under watch for compliance check. HOA internal enforcement, no signature, no date, no contact number." Angela stared at it, then held it up to the light, as if she might find a watermark or some official seal that would legitimize the chill crawling up her spine. There was nothing. The next morning, the first formal notice came, a violation stating their grass exceeded regulation height. Jack read it twice. "I mowed it on Sunday. It's not even half an inch over." Angela walked outside and checked with a ruler. The measurement was exact, regulation compliant. A day later, another notice appeared. This one claimed their trash bins had remained outside beyond approved hours. But they hadn't. Jack had brought them in the same evening. Just like always, a third notice followed within the week. A photo showing their niece's car parked in front of the house, marked as a non-resident vehicle obstructing public access. The photo was grainy, shot at night, taken from the same angle the SUV always paused at. Angela sat down at her laptop and logged into the HOA portal. Their homeowner file, normally sparse, had grown overnight. Now it included a list of minor violations, none older than 10 days, most of them false. The record painted a picture of neglect, disorder, and non-cooperation. And strangely, every entry was marked submitted via internal channel. Jack leaned over her shoulder. Someone's building a paper trail. Angela looked at him, puzzled for what. Jack didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the garage, opened a locked cabinet, and retrieved a small trail camera, the kind hunters use. He didn't say what he was doing with it, but Angela understood. By the time the sun set, 2 motion-activated cameras had been mounted, one tucked near the mailbox, another hidden under the corner of their porch awning. That night, the SUV returned, slower than before. Neither Jack nor Angela spoke as the vehicle passed. They just waited, watching, recording, and listening for what would come next. The air carried that late autumn sharpness that stung the nose but wasn't quite cold enough to bite. Jack stepped out just past 9, hoodie zipped halfway, hands in his pockets. He didn't tell Angela where he was going, only that he needed to walk off the tension. She had nodded, not asking questions. She knew how he got when something itched. At the edges of his instincts, the street was quiet. A few porch lights still glowed, moths circling them in lazy spirals. Jack walked along the sidewalk, the gravel of each step crunching faintly. Then, from behind, the low hum of tires crept closer. He didn't turn. The SUV rolled past slowly, its headlights dimmed but still casting long shadows across the driveways. A pause. Then it parked halfway down the block. Jack kept walking. He passed the stop sign at the end of the street before hearing 2 doors open behind him. No shouting, just footsteps.com/measured. "Evening, sir," said a voice behind him. Male, confident. Jack turned. 2 men approached, one tall and lean, the other wider and older. Both wore the same navy polo, with a stitched patch that read, HOA Internal Enforcement. No name tags, no ID badges. Nothing official. Jack said. Nothing. The taller one spoke again. "Just conducting a wellness check. You've been seen pacing around at odd hours." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You mean walking?" The second man grinned slightly, hands clasped in front of him. "Community safety includes noting suspicious patterns." Jack looked past them, toward the SUV. "Strange how no one else in the neighborhood gets wellness checks at night. We focus on flagged properties." The taller man replied smoothly. "You're on our list." Jack shifted his stance slightly. "Is that list public?" "It doesn't have to be." Neither man moved closer, but neither stepped away. The taller one held a small notepad and wrote something down as if for show. "What exactly are you writing?" Jack asked, voice flat. "Just documenting the interaction." Jack stared at him for a long moment. He could see the posture, the deliberate gestures, the false calm. It wasn't enforcement. It was provocation. They weren't just watching, they were pushing. "You both done?" he asked. The older man narrowed his eyes. "You're not being very cooperative." Jack took a step forward, not aggressive, just enough. I'm not under any obligation to entertain you. A flicker of tension passed between the two men, barely visible. They stepped back a pace. The shorter one muttered, "We'll be filing a report." "You do that?" Jack said. He turned and walked home. He didn't look back. When he entered through the front door, Angela stood in the hallway, phone in hand. "They followed you. I know. What did they want? An excuse?" Angela glanced toward the front window. "They're still out there. Let them sit." He pulled off the hoodie, hung it by the door, then reached into the inside pocket and retrieved a small digital recorder. Angela blinked. "You recorded them? Every word." Jack sat down at the dining table and placed the recorder on the wood with care. "We're not just going to wait around while they play games." Angela didn't reply right away. Then, quietly, she asked, "How far do you think they'll take this?" Jack looked toward the window, where the SUV still idled. His voice came low, steady, far enough to wish they hadn't. The next morning, Angela logged into the HOA's homeowner portal. She had trouble sleeping after Jack's late-night encounter. The SUV hadn't returned that night, but something about the way those men stood, the casual confidence, the practiced vagueness, it left a bitter taste behind. She clicked through the menu until she found the section labeled Compliance History. The entries had doubled overnight. Violation, exterior lighting intensity, warning issued, violation, refusal to cooperate with community patrol, escalated, violation, observed loitering, documented. Angela stared at the list. She clicked the dates. The timestamps were absurd. One claimed Jack had loitered near a school zone at 3:47 a.m., though the nearest school was closed for the season and half a mile away. Another entry marked verbal confrontation during a date. Jack had been out of town for work. Each entry was marked with the same note, submitted via internal enforcement channel. Jack walked in carrying a coffee cup. Angela spun the screen toward him. "They're manufacturing a pattern." Jack studied the screen in silence, then reached over and began taking screenshots. "None of these reports have witness statements. No video, no documentation, just the word of their security team," Angela muttered, "who don't even wear IDs." Jack opened a folder on his laptop labeled HOA evidence. Inside were clips from the trail camera he'd placed near the mailbox. He clicked one from 2:12 a.m. the night before. The SUV appeared again, headlights off, coasting. A man exited from the passenger side, crossed into their lawn, then disappeared from frame. Angela leaned in. "That's our property line. He's stepping in without notice. That's trespassing. I thought they'd stay in the street." "What is he doing?" "I think," Jack said slowly. "He's looking for a camera." Angela blinked. "They're checking for surveillance." Jack paused the video, face unreadable. "They're not just being invasive. They're being careful. That's worse." Angela sat back, pulse rising. Why would they go to this length? "We're not political. We're not disruptive. We don't attend the board meetings. We pay our dues." Jack was still staring at the screen. That might be why she didn't follow. He elaborated. "They think we're isolated, not connected, easier targets. And if they're trying to build false compliance histories for homeowners, they need people who won't fight back." Angela swallowed. "But we will." Jack nodded. "They just don't know that yet." He clicked over to the HOA bylaws on paper. Everything looked standard: code enforcement, appearance rules, parking limits. But nestled in the fine print was a clause titled Internal Oversight Protocol. Jack read it aloud. "The board reserves the right to establish internal enforcement measures when outside agencies are unavailable or insufficient." Angela looked at him. "That's how they're justifying their private security team." He nodded once. "And those measures aren't subject to third-party review unless legally challenged." Angela's voice dropped. "They built a shadow process." Jack copied the clause and began drafting an email. "We'll start with the city's residential code compliance office, then the county. If this enforcement group isn't legally licensed, we'll have leverage." Angela watched as Jack typed, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. It wasn't anger. It was calculation. Discipline. "What if they retaliate?" she asked quietly. Jack didn't stop typing. "Then I'll give them something they'll never forget." But the trail camera blinked red in the corner of the porch as the SUV passed again. This time, the man inside didn't even try to hide the camera he was holding. Angela was already awake when the sound came. It was soft at first, just a dull knock, but it struck twice more sharp and deliberate before she sat upright. She checked the clock. Las 12:38 alto mem. Jack was out of bed, moving toward the front of the house. Neither of them spoke. Through the window, the SUV was parked at the edge of their driveway. Its headlights were off, but the cabin light glowed faintly. Two figures stood on the path leading to the porch. One held a clipboard. The other had a flashlight, angled low but sweeping the ground as if mapping it. Angela stood behind Jack as he opened the front door. He didn't step out. He simply stood there, barefoot on the tile, his silhouette framed in the porch light. The man with the clipboard smiled without warmth. "Apologies for the hour. We're conducting an after-hours vehicle verification. Several cars have been logged on rotation lists. We're making sure all residents are in compliance." Jack didn't answer. The man gestured toward the driveway. We noticed an unregistered license plate last week. Could we confirm your garage inventory? Jack stared. Are you asking to inspect my garage? It's standard procedure. Jack stepped out onto the porch, slowly, arms at his sides. Show me where that's written. The second man, younger, adjusted his flashlight beam to shine. At Jack's chest, subtle, but clear, not for vision. For intimidation. The air between them tensed. Angela's hand hovered over her phone inside the house. Jack glanced down at the light, then back to the man holding it. Lower that. Neither man moved. The older one spoke again, voice neutral. You've received multiple warnings. Your status is elevated for proactive checks. By whose authority? The HOA board. Jack's expression didn't change, but his stance shifted just slightly. And the county sheriff's office. Are they informed you're doing midnight checks on private property? The younger man said. We're well within our right. No, Jack cut in. You're not? Silence fell. A dog barked faintly somewhere down the street. No other neighbors came out. No porch lights flicked. Just Jack, facing two men who didn't belong, pretending they did. The older man reached for something in his back pocket. Jack's posture changed instantly. Subtle, instinctive. He didn't step back, he braced. It was a moment only someone trained would recognize. But what came out of the pocket wasn't a weapon. It was a phone. The man began recording, lifting the lens toward Jack. This is property 214, he said, narrating. Homeowner is refusing inspection. Note, timestamp. Jack took one step forward and said evenly, you'll stop recording now. The younger man lifted his flashlight again, not at Jack's chest this time, toward his face. Angela didn't hesitate. She flipped on the porch light, bright as a spotlight, and pointed her phone outward. Her camera lens caught all three men. In a frozen frame, Jack staring them down, the guards mid-move. Jack didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Leave now, or stay and explain this to actual law enforcement. There was a beat. Then the clipboard dropped an inch. The flashlight dimmed. The older man muttered something, then turned. The other followed as they climbed. Back into the SUV, Jack said one last thing, barely loud enough for Angela to hear. They're pushing to see how far I'll go. Angela stood next to him, recording still running. And what happens when they find out? Jack stared at the retreating lights. They'll wish they hadn't. The letter came 2 days later, printed on thick paper, and sealed in a plain white envelope. No postage. It had been hand-delivered, slipped into their mailbox without timestamp or signature. At the top, in bold type, it read, Notice of formal violation hearing, mandatory appearance required. Angela read it twice, then passed it to Jack across the kitchen table. They're summoning us like we're on trial. Jack skimmed it quickly, jaw tightening. The list of supposed violations had grown again. Now it included refusal to comply with security procedures, escalated resident interaction, and verbal intimidation of staff. He folded the letter and slid it into a folder marked HOA records. They want a confrontation. Angela looked at him. Are we going? Jack stood. Absolutely. They arrived at the HOA community center a few minutes before the hearing. The building was quiet, all glass and beige carpet, artificial plants at every corner. Inside the conference room, a long table waited. At the head sat the HOA president, an older man with reading glasses and a voice that trembled slightly when he welcomed them. Two other board members flanked him, both silent. Cutter, the head of security, stood at the side of the room, arms crossed, eyes locked on Jack. Angela felt it immediately. They weren't guests. They were being examined. The president cleared his throat and gestured to the two chairs at the opposite end of the table. Please, we'll begin promptly. Jack didn't sit right away. Instead, he set a small leather wallet on the table in front of him, centered and closed. Then he sat down beside Angela. The president began reading from a paper. It was clearly rehearsed. You have been brought forward for review due to a growing number of concerns. Security personnel have documented multiple infractions. Jack raised a hand calmly. Can we see that documentation? Cutter shifted slightly, but said nothing. The president hesitated. They've submitted internal logs. These aren't typically released to residents. Jack replied evenly. So no body cam footage, timestamps, or signed reports. Another pause. Jack tapped the leather wallet with one finger. Let me show you something. He flipped it open slowly. Inside was a laminated identification card, dark blue background, golden seal, black text above the photo. The emblem was unmistakable. No organization in the room could confuse it with anything else. Beneath the seal, in capital letters, Naval, Special Welfare, Retired, CLA Era NES. No one spoke. Cutter's smirk vanished. Jack didn't raise his voice. I've served overseas. I've coordinated operations with multiple federal agencies. I understand chain of command, boundaries, and legal jurisdiction. He slid a second paper forward, his compiled record of the trail cam footage. Screenshots of the falsified violations, timestamps, proving he was out of state during alleged incidents. This is my record. Yours is manufactured. The room felt colder. One board member leaned forward to look more closely at the ID. The president shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Cutter's arms had lowered. Jack didn't blink. You've deployed a private security contractor with expired licenses who has trespassed on my property and created a false enforcement history that stops now. Angela watched the tension shift. The balance of control, so tightly held by Cutter moments ago, had collapsed under the weight of something simple, truth backed by discipline. The president cleared his throat. We may need time to review this. Jack nodded. You'll take the time, but understand this, no longer stays inside your committee. He stood. Angela followed. Jack didn't take the ID back. He left it there, open on the table. As they walked out, Cutter didn't follow. He just stared, silent now, like someone who just realized they picked the wrong man to test. Angela couldn't stop replaying the look on Cutter's face when Jack left the room. Not angry, not defensive, just still like someone caught between recognition and calculation. That kind of reaction didn't come from fear. It came from exposure. And exposure meant he had something to lose. That evening, while Jack filed an official complaint with the county regulatory board, Angela took a quieter route. She opened her laptop, created a blank document, entitled it Cutter. She began with the obvious. His full name, the name of his security firm, and the contract terms at least what little had been publicly disclosed, but something didn't add up. The security company, labeled Cutter Residential Solutions, had no website, no phone number, no licensing record under the county database, no employees listed other than Cutter himself. She expanded her search. A forum thread from 3 years ago surfaced on a local housing message board. It was buried under dozens of posts, but one caught her eye. HOA security firm accused of overreach in Lakewood Heights. She clicked. The story was familiar. A man named Cutter had enforced off-the-record patrols under an HOA's internal clause just like theirs. There had been complaints, quiet settlements, then silence. Angela found the author of the post, a woman named Elena Mercer. A few social media clicks later, she found her account, still active, with a profile photo taken in a garden that looked like it belonged in the same neighborhood from the article. Angela hesitated, then sent a message. Hi Elena, I live in Oakmere Crossing. We're dealing with a man named Cutter, in a nearly identical situation. Did anything ever happen with yours? Elena replied in less than an hour. We moved. We didn't want to, but we were exhausted. He had connections on the board. They made up reports. I found out later the HOA president and Cutter were business partners. All the security contracts went through him. The HOA paid his firm. He paid himself. Angela felt the pieces locking into place. She typed again. Did you ever get proof? Elena answered. Yes. Old HOA treasurer sent me copies of the books. He resigned quietly, said he was threatened. Angela sat still for a long moment. She could feel it now, not paranoia, not confusion, purpose. This wasn't about yard signs or trash bins. This was about power and profit. Cutter wasn't a hired hand. He was the one holding the leash. She forwarded the screenshots and messages. To Jack, his reply was short. I'll handle the legal route. Keep digging. Quietly. The next day, Angela stopped by the HOA office under the pretense of picking up a recycling schedule. While waiting, she glanced at the wall of staff photos. The HOA president, the board, the contracted services liaison, and beside that, framed in bronze, was a community appreciation plaque awarded to Cutter Residential Solutions last year. Jack's voice echoed in her mind. They think we're isolated. Back home. Angela downloaded everything. Screenshots, quotes, names. She saved them under encrypted backup folders. Twice. And just as she was closing the files, an email arrived. No sender name, no subject. Just one line. Watch what you dig up. Some things bury you back. She stared at it. No link, no attachments. Just those 12 words. She read it again. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not because it wasn't serious, but because whoever sent it had already made the same mistake the men outside their house had made. They assumed they were the ones watching. By the following evening, the SUV didn't return. Angela sat by the living room window past midnight, her tea long gone cold. For almost 3 weeks, the vehicle had passed like clockwork. But tonight, the street was empty. No headlights, no flash of glass catching the porch light. No men with clipboards or phones angled toward their home. Jack had expected it. Earlier that day, he had driven 2 counties over and handed a folder to the state's regulatory board names, dates, financial inconsistencies, and footage. All of it compiled, time-stamped, organized. He hadn't waited to be asked. He didn't trust the local offices anymore. He trusted the pressure of higher hands. The kind who took misuse of funds and impersonation of law enforcement seriously. Angela's inbox had also stayed quiet. No reply from the anonymous message. No more violations filed in the HOA portal. Not even the usual neighborhood spam from board members. It was silence, sudden and total. The next morning, their mailbox contained a letter. Again, hand-delivered plain envelope. The message inside was short. The HOA has terminated its contract with Cutter Residential Solutions, effective immediately. Security services are suspended pending review. No signature, no seal, no explanation. Jack read it and set it down like a grocery list. That's not a decision, that's a retreat. Angela didn't smile. You think it's over? No, he said. I think they're hiding until they figure out what I'm holding. Angela posted a short, vague message on a local community forum that evening. She didn't name names. She simply asked if anyone else had ever received a late-night HOA visit. Within the hour, a man from across the neighborhood replied, "We had 2 walk-bys and a complaint filed after my wife questioned the board's fees. We thought it was coincidence." Others followed. They flagged our house. After we missed a meeting, we were fined 3 times for noise violations. We live alone. No parties. I have a cam that caught someone looking through our side gate last month. Angela replied to each one privately. She didn't offer details, just a meeting. Quiet off record. 6 families. Agreed. Jack hosted it in their garage with the door closed and the lights low. He laid everything out on a workbench like evidence. The trail cam footage, the fake violations, the anonymous message. When he showed his ID, a few jaws dropped. But he didn't flash it with pride. He laid it down like a reason no one could argue with. One neighbor, a retired school teacher, stared at the photos. We all just let it happen. Jack nodded. You weren't wrong to stay quiet. That's how control works, make everyone think it's isolated. Another neighbor, a younger father with a newborn, asked the question no one had said aloud yet. What now? Jack looked around the room. Now you document every file, every dollar, every minute that can't be explained. You keep copies. Outside your homes, you talk to other homeowners in nearby neighborhoods. If this happened here, it happened somewhere else. Angela added quietly, don't go to the board directly, not yet. Outside, the street was still quiet. But in homes, up and down the block, curtains were being pulled back. People were beginning to look out, not with fear, but with new awareness. Cutter's SUV was gone. But Jack knew. Something else had arrived in its place. The kind of silence that only comes before a storm. 2 weeks passed without incident. The street returned to its usual rhythm, morning joggers, evening porch lights, weekend sprinklers hissing faintly across trimmed lawns. But beneath the calm, something had shifted. Conversations between neighbors were no longer just about weather or landscaping. Now, they shared details, files, dates. The illusion of peace had cracked. What once felt like quiet order, now felt like surveillance undone. Angela received a call from a journalist 5 towns over who had picked up whispers of unauthorized HOA security activity. Jack didn't stop her from talking. He just asked that the names be omitted for now. The story would surface eventually, but he preferred it reach the right eyes before the loud ones. Then one morning, just past 8, someone knocked at the door. Angela peeked through the peephole and saw a man in a suit, mid-50s, neatly dressed, alone. No security patches, no clipboard. Just a messenger bag slung over one shoulder and a hesitant expression. Jack opened the door himself. Mr. Conlon? The man asked. Jack nodded. My name's Robert Ellis. I'm the interim president of the HOA board. Angela appeared beside him. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He looked like someone sent to apologize for someone else's sins. I'd like a few minutes of your time, he said. Jack gestured for him to come inside. No small talk followed. They sat in the dining room, where a folder still lay open from Jack's last round of correspondence with county investigators. I'm here because we've reviewed your file, Ellis began. And the footage and the board's history with the former contractor. Jack waited. Ellis sighed. There are things I can't undo, but I can tell you this. We've ended the security contract permanently. Cutter no longer has ties to the HOA. Several former board members have resigned quietly. We're holding emergency elections next month. Angela leaned forward slightly. What about the fabricated violations? They're being removed, and the new board will vote to expunge the digital records. And the financial side? Jack asked. We're auditing everything. Outside firm, full transparency. We have too many questions. Ellis reached into his bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. I also came to offer a formal apology. The board would like to consider you for a community liaison role, someone who can advise on resident concerns, compliance, ethics, and security policy. You'd have a vote on future contracts. Jack said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, you're here because you want to avoid a lawsuit. Ellis didn't deny it. And because I know we've lost your trust. Angela exchanged a glance with Jack. He picked up the envelope unopened and set it aside. I don't want a seat on the board, Jack said. I want you to stop operating like you're above the law. Ellis nodded. Understood. The man stood, thanked them, and left. Jack didn't walk him out. Angela closed the door behind him. That evening, Angela sat in the garden while Jack worked in the garage. She looked across their trimmed lawn, the trees swaying gently. For the first time in weeks, she didn't check the shadows, but she did glance toward the porch camera, still mounted, still blinking faintly. She knew Cutter was gone, but in neighborhoods like this, people like him didn't vanish. They relocated. Jack returned inside and placed a single folded paper on the counter. It wasn't from the HOA. It was a classified notification from a federal agency. They had received his file. They were opening an inquiry. Angela looked at the letter, then at Jack. You sent it after all. He nodded once. Quiet doesn't mean finished.